Why, hello, everybody. We're back, and I'm joined by Andrew Sagel of Mox Boarding House.
Hey, everyone.
And we're going to talk about the new games that have come out in the past week or so. But why don't you start off telling us a little bit about Mox Boarding House?
Oh, yeah. So, Mox Boarding House, if you haven't been, it's a game store both in Seattle, or north of Seattle, rather, and in Bellevue. They're wonderful, wonderful spaces with restaurants attached where gamers and community can come together and try out these games, buy them if you like.
Private rooms you can rent too, I think?
Yeah, also private rooms if you have any special occasions, anything like that you want to try out. But we love for people to come in because we're open every day until midnight. So be sure to check us out at Mox Boarding House.
With a huge game library, and a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about is in your library available to try out before you buy.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And what about Portland?
So right now we are just in Seattle and Bellevue. However, at the end of this year, we are going to be having a store in Portland. So keep an eye out down there. And we're going to be, I think, making waves there.
Making waves in Portland?
Yes, making waves in Portland. There's a river. That's the thing.
What game would you like to start with this week?
This week I was actually really interested in showing off or bringing up Lanterns Dice. So Lanterns is a game that a lot of people...
A very well-received game, a very
Yes.
highly regarded game.
It's a fantastic game, the original Lanterns that was made. But I really like this iteration of it. I've seen a lot of roll and write games coming up lately, and this is another one in that vein. If you haven't heard...
So it's a roll and write?
Yes.
Okay.
If you haven't heard of roll and write, it is actually pretty specifically what that means. You roll some dice, and then you will be writing on a pad of paper to show your progression or your score in the game. In this one, there is a cool little tray where you roll dice into that are going to center the 4 dice into a square.
Okay.
Now, if it is my turn, I'll get to take that tray and rotate it so that I get the piece that I want. And then the other points on that tray tell me what the other players are getting.
Okay.
So
it sounds very like the original Lanterns, which was like a tile selection game, and you
Right.
would kind of take the tile towards you, but then other players could use the other sides of the tiles for their own purposes.
Right, but the big difference in this, instead of building one lake between all the players here, you're building on your own board.
Okay.
And then there's points that you're effectively racing towards by achieving certain shapes on the board that looks like something you would see out of Barron Park is a really good example. If you really like Barron Park or the original Lanterns, you're probably going to have a fantastic time with Lanterns Dice here.
Well, so if this is a roll and write, it does sound a little bit different than other roll and writes, where a lot of them are, you'll roll or you'll draw a card or something, and everybody gets to use that one resource. So theoretically, you could have a roll and write game of like 200 people or something playing. But this one sounds like you actually do something with that one resource on your turn while people are paying attention to you.
Correct.
Okay.
There's a
it
set
feels
of
like there's more player interaction than
yes,
most roll and writes.
because I can look at what you're doing. I can, if I'm paying attention to the other boards, if you really want to avoid one player getting a specific resource, you can stall that out for a certain amount of time. If you're a really, really, I want to say strategic, but really spiteful player, you can...
So if you want to crush somebody, like
if you would want to crush someone...
If you were a muscle master.
Right. If you were someone, I don't know, that even in a cooperative setting, you would be looking to crush someone else, Lanterns Dice, you can find a way to play that way.
So maximum crushitude if necessary.
If needed.
Okay.
Yeah. Lanterns Dice, pretty fantastic. I like that they took the style of a game that was a success. They kept a lot of the theme to it. They kept a lot of the style to it. And they changed enough of the gameplay that this is its own game in its own right. I've seen a lot of people kind of like write off of other games.
Is its own game in its own roll and write?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure that's on the record.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. That was disgusting. Okay. I think we need to change games.
But hold on, one more thing is that
Yes.
Lanterns was kind of a very accessible game. I wouldn't call it a family game per se, but it was pretty widely acceptable or accessible, like in age groups and in like complexity and stuff like that. Do you feel like Lantern Dice is kind of still along that same line, or is this a little bit divergent?
It is along those same lines. I think Lantern's Dice has just one half step more, or of complexity to it. It's not nowhere near into the realms of analysis paralysis or anything like that. But you're gonna hit a lot of the same audience, especially if they've played Lanterns a lot and they're looking for just a little bit more.
Sure. So it sounds like recommended if you like Lanterns.
Yeah.
If you kind of want broadly accessible games, or if you're into roll and write games, or curious about them, but maybe want one that has a little bit more player interaction, this seems like a good pick.
Yeah, actually, roll and write games in general, I think this would be a fantastic one to start with.
Cool.
It's definitely easy enough to jump into, and then you're going to get a lot of rewarding scoring and big plays that you can achieve throughout the game.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Cool.
What's next?
All right, actually,
I'm going to hand that to you.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Once Upon a Castle here. Once Upon a Castle is this very, very adorable.
Please tell me it's a roll and write based on the fact that you're drawing the front.
Yes, it is.
Oh, this is
It
great.
is. It is another roll and write. Roll and writes have been more and more popular lately, and we've been seeing some really innovative designs coming in on it. In this roll and write game here, as you mentioned, a lot of times you can provide a resource by rolling, and then everyone gets to interact on that resource. That is something that happens in Once Upon a Castle. In Once Upon a Castle, you have it's almost like a bingo style sheet, where you are rolling resources, and you will get 2 resources, and then everyone else that's playing gets to choose one of those resources. And you're filling them out to fulfill different parts of your castle.
Okay.
You're trying to build walls, you're trying to build towers.
But everyone's building their own castles.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And actually there is in the game, there is a sheet that shows a castle, and you can sort of mark them off if you want, but there's also an alternative side where you can draw your own castle from scratch if you wanted to.
Okay.
The object of the game is to complete your castle. Completing different portions of it allows you to add windows or score additional points if you do it first, that kind of thing. But this is a game where everyone is included all the time, which is a really big bonus, especially when you get towards, this is definitely a family style game.
Well, the included all the time thing, I think, is one of, I don't think it's essential to roll and writes, but I think it's almost universal to roll and writes.
Right.
Is that almost all the time, it's not my turn and then your turn. It's almost always like, here's the thing that's happening now, we all do something with it.
Oh yeah.
And it sounds like both Lanterns and this one, it's not universal that everything is shared, but at least some component is.
Right. They both avoid the downtime, so you get to just continue playing no matter whose turn it is.
Kind of reminds me of Kingdoms of Valeria, or Valeria Card
Oh,
Kingdom.
Valeria Card Kingdoms, yes.
Yeah.
Where, again, a dice rolling game, but it will trigger the effects of a lot of different pieces on everyone's board, which keeps everyone engaged in the game.
Yep.
This game also, it's a relatively quick game. This one's going to go about half an hour pretty consistently.
Okay.
There is an inevitable end to it. You will continue to build, so you never get stuck in this game where you can't do anything. Yeah, so it's pretty solid.
So this is like, if you want a very family-friendly roll and write, this is a good pick?
Certainly.
Who else would you recommend it for?
Ooh, I would recommend it for
like if you don't have a family, well, if you don't have, I guess, family at home to play games with,
right?
Is this something that you want to pick up to play with your friends, or is this very like kid focused? Do you think?
There is a competitive element to it. If you want to, again, this has kind of a range to it.
Sure.
It is accessible, so families absolutely can play this.
Okay.
But if you get a group of gamers together, there is an automatic sort of checks and balances that will form where if we see that Derek has filled in too many people in his castle and he's already building windows, well then we're going to start directing certain, trying to catch up with that or trying to end the game scoring different elements before he gains more.
Would you recommend this for folks who want to get into roll and writes, or is this better for people who are into it?
Oh, I see. Well, yeah, I could say this would be another entry point for roll and writes. If you are more veteran gamers, I would still probably lean a bit more towards something like Lantern's Dice.
Okay.
But Once Upon a Castle is accessible. It is fun. It has a lot of replayability to it.
And on the castle, because like on the back here, I don't know if it showed up in the camera, but like there's basically a dotted line kind of not paint by numbers, but like draw by numbers, almost castle-like element.
Right.
So this does seem more like almost like a draw and write, or no, roll and draw as opposed to a roll and write per se.
Yes, you're effectively filling in these components of your castle in one-time use fashion.
Okay.
So effectively, it has the same similar mechanic behind it.
Okay.
But you can also actually draw your castle on the opposite side.
Okay, cool, very neat. What's next?
What's next is one I haven't played this one, but I'm actually quite excited about this. This game is called Super Punch Fighter.
What's the name of the game?
Super Punch Fighter.
Okay.
It's Super Punch Fighter. It looks hilarious. It looks like a very kind of campy take on a King of Tokyo Super Smash Brothers, like amateur hero style brawler.
It really seems to be kind of channeling video game fighters,
Right.
Like a side scroller kind of
Yes.
brawling game.
Yes.
Because like the back cover has all these like shiny candy buttons and stuff on them. You choose your fighter. It has like the A button, the B button, that kind of thing. So if you've been playing games in arcades, the graphic design seems to be channeling that element.
Yes, it is. It is taking a lot from the gamepad arcade cabinet style fighting.
Okay.
Now, what makes that unique, though, is the buttons that you mentioned, the buttons that are on there, that's a resource in the game.
Sure.
And you can actually...
So I can run out of A buttons?
Yes, you can, because you only have so many fingers.
Sure.
So when you try to make a really big move, you actually expend these thumbs that you put on the buttons.
Sure.
And you can only take so many of those back each turn. The rest get discarded.
I'm just imagining like somebody with like 30 thumbs.
Yes, and that's mildly terrifying. Like when you're
Mildly, yes.
thinking about like playing this. But also, I like the character design. It seems, again, like these are some sort of not quite like what you would call A-list heroes or anything. There are the one on the back listed is Security Guard Steve. He's a security guard, and he's going to come in here and he's going to duke it out with the rest of them.
So I feel like this is the fighting game about all the people that in like Streets of Rage or Double Dragon or something like that you were just punching as the hero. You're playing all
all the others,
the minions.
But this is also very cool. It's reminiscent of something like if you enjoyed King of Tokyo, that kind of like brawler fighter. Very quick play. And
It looks like it's got like a hex grid map.
Yes, so you actually are on a hex grid. Some of the drawing, like line of sight, does matter.
Okay.
There are ranges on different attacks. You push and pull people, you attack them and knock them out.
I guarantee that there's some sort of get over here and Hadouken moves.
Yes.
So
Yes, there
direction
is.
and line of sight seem to matter.
Yes. However, if you do get knocked out, one thing I really like about this that does come back to the video games that it's drawing from is you just immediately respawn. Once you knock someone out, they're not out of the game. You just continue playing until someone achieves the victory limit to their score.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Seems very video gamey.
Oh, yeah.
So, other than video game fans, other
Right.
than people who might have 30 thumbs and a lot of quarters,
Right.
Who would you recommend this game for?
Absolutely people who have enjoyed King of Tokyo before.
Okay.
That one's just, I think, a no-brainer to me because there's so much that relates to this.
It has a very similar kind of like a brawly feel that you mentioned.
Right.
King of Tokyo is a very like a dice-heavy random game in some sense.
Correct.
Risk-reward kind of thing.
In this one, you're actually planning out your moves.
Okay.
You can actually chain cards in combos. You can launch a combo, and you can chain one attack to the other if you have the cards and the thumbs available.
Great.
The other one I would actually mention is a game called Underworlds, the Age of Sigmar Games Workshop hex grid-based combat game. Now that one I think is actually a little bit more in-depth, but actually not that much further in-depth than Super Punch Fighter. I think
I want
they've
you
done
to, whenever you sit down to play Warhammer now, I
Oh.
want you to say, it's time for Fantasy Punch Fighter.
Yes, it's gonna happen.
Or Fantasy Stab Fighter, maybe?
Maybe.
Depending on the army you play,
yeah.
I'll permit you to change that
No
adjective.
matter what, one of my guys will always be security guard Steve.
Okay, great.
Yes, in any brawler I play now. So I would encourage you to give Super Punch Fighter a chance. I'm going to just selfishly be opening this for Mox because I want to play it.
Nelly was saying that we need to open it to get a box toot in, so maybe we'll do that later.
Oh, yeah.
But I noticed that it has 1 to 6 players. It has a solo mode?
Yes, there's a solo mode, and then there's also a variation when it comes down to 2 players. There are up to 6 players in this game here, but they add in minions for when you get down to fewer players to still make the arena exciting.
Well, it sounds like that's to prevent people from being able to just kind of run away from each other.
Right. I'm not sure who, like, of these characters, if one excels at movement more than others, that kind of thing. But there's certainly design in place to keep that from happening.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, do you know how the single-player version works? Is it like, are those minions just controlled by an AI deck or something like that?
No,
not sure?
I'm not sure about that. With the 2-player version, I believe each person plays with the minions, but I haven't played the 1-player mode yet.
Okay. But it says players 1 to 6, so
Right.
it sounds like it supports a solo play. So, you know, again, if you want to kind of play it by yourself to calm down, or if you want to play it by yourself to learn it before you teach some friends, that might support that too.
Yeah. Cool.
What else do you have for us?
Let's see. Where is that legendary forest?
It's over here.
Yeah, legendary forest. I'm going to check that one out now. Legendary forest here. Everyone is working to build their own beautiful forest. This is a tile laying game, up to 5 players, but actually this can expand to easily, you can go up to like 50 or 100 players if you have enough components to play. And you'll see
So you're encouraging people to buy about 50 copies of this game.
Yeah, actually, I encourage you to buy exactly the amount that we have at Mox.
I feel like we're escalating. 30 thumbs, 50 copies.
Right.
The next one you're going to be like, you need 100 players.
I wonder if I can make that happen. We'll see if we can make that happen.
Okay.
But actually, I think we're capped out here with Legendary Forest. This is a tile placement game where you are building up flowers and forest. And I'll show you a little bit on the back here how they
very pretty.
lay together.
Again, it reminds me of lanterns. It reminds me of a bunch of other tile laying games. Papillon, we just talked about, has kind of a similar, like building a garden, like laying down like similar flowers and stuff like that.
Yeah. There's, if people play Carcassonne, that's one of the biggest tile placement games I know of. That's something that people will relate to here, where every side that attaches must make sense.
Sure.
However, in this game, there are, as you're building, there are tiles that come up that choose when you get to mark something for scoring.
Okay.
So you might be building some beautiful aspect of this forest, but if you don't get to score it, then it's not worth anything at the end of the game. And that scoring is going to be a little bit randomized in how many chances you get throughout the game to do so. So there's a lot of choices of when you are placing these down, how you're building off of them, whether or not you want to ensure that you score something smaller or go for something bigger, hoping you'll find something.
Okay. So then, is this a game that you recommend for folks who are big Carcassonne fans?
Yeah, Carcassonne, and especially there's another game called Karuba that you are looking through, trying to find temples by building paths through a jungle.
Sure.
That's another one that I would definitely recommend trying out, because the transition from one game to the other would be, I think, very, very easy to be done. One of the big mechanics and why you can go up to many, many players is that one player has all of their tiles face down. And when they choose a tile to start with, they say, I have tile number 17. Then everybody selects tile number 17 and they start building their own. And then,
so you're not building one, you're building...
No, each player is building their own forest.
Oh, so you know, like this almost sounds like, I think you have a theme going on here, I might suspect. Because this sounds kind of like a weird hybrid between not quite a roll and write and not quite like Carcassonne, but kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
Where, you know, you're not randomly determining what resource you have, but everybody has the same tiles, and you pick which tile you want to place, and then everybody else gets to place that same tile. So you are trying to build your own beautiful forest.
Correct.
And you're trying to be very, very mindful of what other people are building in their forests so that you don't set them up to score more points than you.
Well, you actually have very little choice in that matter. If you're the person with your tiles face down, you don't know what you're choosing.
Oh, interesting. So it's randomized in that sense.
Yes, it's randomized in that sense, so you can't sort of cherry pick which ones are coming up. And furthermore, several, up to like 5 of the tiles are removed from the person's pool that is choosing the tiles.
So is only one person having their tiles face down, and they
Correct.
choose tiles for the entire game?
For the entire game.
Interesting.
Yep. Yeah, but that's to ensure
So they
that
are basically the roller, and everyone else is the writer.
Right.
But they still get to build their own and try to score it?
That is correct.
Interesting.
Because effectively, that means that everyone is randomized because no one knows what tiles are coming up next.
Okay.
And also, everyone else doesn't know which tiles have been removed. So even if you have all of them face up in front of you, you can't guarantee that you're going to be able to find this one coming up next.
It's very neat to see where the roll and write ideas get picked up by other games and carried away. Because this is effectively a roll and write, but without rolling per se, or like they generate that randomness in a different way.
Right.
It's
It
really
is
neat.
still a shared.
Right, you say?
Right, you say. Oh my gosh. Correct. Correct. There is an element where there is a big element where you're looking at the mechanics from resource sharing and seeing how to implement those. Karuba is another one that does that. Mechanically, when you're drawing the tiles, one person's face down, the leader of the expedition is doing effectively a very, very similar start to the turn.
Cool.
Also, I do want to mention ILO games. They consistently have beautiful art on their games. I'm a really big fan of art on games. A lot of people like the meats and mechanics of games to be very, very solid. I'm one of those people as well. However, the art is what brings me into the game at first, and the art inside on the components, if it's carried through, just really adds to the experience I have when I'm playing a game. So I really enjoy that part of Legendary Forest as well.
It is very, very pretty.
Yeah.
What else?
The Cult of Barnacle Bay.
I feel.
I thought you meant Bay. B-A-E.
Oh, yes, I did.
Before all else.
Yes.
The barnacles before all else.
Yeah, the barnacles before all else.
This feels like what we have been terming a Kickstarter board game, capital K, capital B.
Yes, there's a lot in this. This is one of the first games by Panda Cult Games. It is a cooperative game where you have started in the beautiful, peaceful village of Barnacle before all else. And they have been very overrun by some terrible hybrid monsters that have been, I guess, changed by an evil being. And it's up to you and a group of other heroes to bring Barnacle Bay back to peace.
Do you get to play the parrot?
No.
Well, what the hell?
Yeah.
But it looks like there's like a fox rogue and like some sort of turtle
Tank.
tank.
His name is Tank.
Oh, okay, all right, that makes sense.
Right.
Is this a goat man?
Yes, it is Goatman.
A goat man druid kind of thing, and then like human fighter, and then is that a cat wolf man thing?
Yeah.
Cat wolf man thing. All
so
right. That's
actually,
official.
if you the back, the descriptions on the back are what really, really got me when it's talking about the crab-crazed otter fishermen, the tentacle bunny zealots, the fish bat casters, and the fearsome berserking bear sharks.
All right. Yep. Sure. I'm in.
Yeah. And all of those mentioned, they all have individual minis in this, or groups of minis to represent those monsters.
So we have 5 heroes. What? That's that a 3 or a 5? That's a 5. 3. Those are 3s?
Oh no,
Are they 5s?
those are 5s.
Okay. So we have what? 20, 36, 37, 40 minis, 40 monster minis, 5 hero minis.
Yep.
There's actually a list here with the numbers that I could have just looked at.
Yes.
But I proved that I could do math.
Almost.
We got there.
Yes. But this is a co-op. It's a campaign-driven game with a number of different scenarios in them. The enemies have effectively like a program movement to them, so you get to adjust how you want to play in a given scenario.
Co-op campaign is what specifically I mentioned in the back. So, like, it sounds like there's an actual story that might kind of develop in here
Yes,
too.
and actually, how you go through the story
you
is
seem
really
real
exciting.
excited.
Yes,
Okay.
I really, really like this
All right.
because
I asked the right question.
yes, when you get to a scenario, you have a choice in the scenario, and you can choose to trust a person or follow this trail or do this thing, and it will tell you, oh, go to scenario this page,
cool.
and then you set it up. So it is you get to choose which scenario you're going to based on the choices you as a party get to make.
Sweet.
Yeah, and there's a lot of the archetypes. There's like the caster, the rogue, the fighter, the tank, that kind of thing in the game. But it's pretty well done. One of the things that actually also sets this one apart, because there are a lot of games, if you really enjoy something like Zombicide, or if you enjoy Gloomhaven, or Arcadia Quest, stuff like that, where you get to, Masmorra is another one, where you get to delve through these dungeons and uncover the tiles and fight against monsters. There's a lot of hack and slash in
This
here.
really seems like if you want a dungeon crawly experience, but you like kind of weird anthropomorphic characters,
Right.
this seems like what it's trying to hit.
Right, and then
Or
you
if you
get
just really love barnacles because they're your
I'm not gonna do it.
bay.
I'm not gonna say it.
All right.
All right.
You're gonna let us all down.
So I almost went with jam. I was just gonna go, yeah, Barnacle Jam.
Barnacle Jam.
Yeah.
I don't think that would be very appetizing.
But something that does set this one apart, there are a lot of games that look like this. One thing that sets Barnacle Bay apart is there's a really cool initiative track.
Okay.
And based where you are in the initiative, you get specific bonuses. If you're number 1, you get like more defense. If you're number 3, you get more attack, that kind of thing.
Can you control the initiative then?
That's it. That's the big move. You can actually either by eliminating an enemy, you can shift people in that initiative, giving different bonuses, or you can choose, I'm going to fall back and move myself to the back of the initiative order. It may give the enemies first action, but it changes what you and I get to do.
That sounds like it might add like a little bit of a tactical element to it.
Oh,
As
absolutely.
opposed to just dice rolling.
Yes, there's far more to it than that.
Sour Beers in chat mentioned that this sounds a lot like Mice and Mystics. So Mice and Mystics, is another kind of miniature dungeon crawly game. Well, you're turned into mice. You're traveling through this larger world.
Right.
There's a story. It has a little bit of a branching thing of, depending on how this encounter goes, you go to this next encounter.
Right.
Do you know how similar the campaign is to that? Because a lot of people may have played that.
I'm not sure exactly how similar it would be to Mice and Mystics, particularly, or even I think it's like the Mistwood Tales. I think it's the Mice and Mystics expansion, but this one has a pretty substantial amount of scenarios baked into the
Sounds like there might
first
be
one.
more choices or variety than there would be in Mice and Mystics, at least the base game.
Right.
Because the Mice and Mystics base game isn't this huge beast of a thing.
Right.
So it may, sounds like you just maybe might be able to do more. So if you like that element, this is another one to try out.
Yes, and also part of the title, this is called The Cult of Barnacle Bay. And before that, it says it's a new Wander story, ellipses. So it implies that there may be other Wander stories that you can include in these. I know there's an expansion to this as well, where you actually get to play as a bear shark character. So they are expanding. Yeah, there it is. They are expanding on this in one way or another, whether or not it is with the story specifically or with more characters. There may be another big box coming up. I'm not sure about that just
Now,
yet.
is the bear shark, what class in D&D would the bear shark be?
It's a bear shark.
A berserker?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great.
A berserker. You're
Great.
correct.
A bay shark?
Yes, a bay shark. I take it back.
No, I think the bay shark is the charisma build for
Okay, yeah. There's a couple ways you can play the bear shark.
that. Was this on Kickstarter? Do you know?
I'm actually not sure if that was on Kickstarter first.
I mean, it just feels very Kickstarter. I'm not
Yeah,
sure if
it
was.
does feel like a Kickstarter.
Well, I'm just asking too, partly because like if people pick this up and they're really intrigued, then following the creators on Kickstarter or something like that might kind of clue you into other stuff.
Yeah, definitely check them out though.
Okay, this is also anher 1 to 4 player game, so it sounds
Right.
like it's totally fine playing one player.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So Barnacle Bay, give it a shot. I like the elements of it, especially in the initiative
It
track.
says the gameplay is 1 hour.
I
Do you
thi-
believe that?
I think the scenarios, once a person knows how to go through the first one,
Do you think that includes setup?
probably not.
Okay.
Probably not.
Hold on, just for audio purposes.
There it is.
What's next?
All right, what's next here is the Ringmaster. This
So
is
you play Sauron.
Yes.
Great.
No, you play as a brief instance of Sam.
Okay.
Yeah. In Ringmaster, you are playing a very quick little card game that takes part in the big top. A lot of the tropes of big circuses come into play here. You have the Ringmaster themselves. You have attractions, you have events and animals, you even have sideshows that happen. Sideshows are particularly creepy.
Sideshow Bob's?
No, there's actually a clown juggling knives.
Cool.
And
that seems totally safe and reasonable and not scary.
right, and they definitely portrayed it in the way that you remember it, which is like the scary version, and not the way that like you may have actually like seen it. This is a quick playing game where you're trying to accrue cards that tell you your victory conditions, and then trying to meet those. Something similar to that might happen in a game like Flux. However, this has a little bit more structure to it, which adds into a little bit more strategy as well.
It reminds me of there's another small card game in this box. It's the Romeo and Juliet game. Do you remember it? It's, not Genoa, but it's the one where you're kind of drafting and passing cards around, and the cards are both the victory conditions and the ones you use to get victory.
I haven't played that one.
It's really neat. I need to remember the name of that one, but like it kind of sounds like that. Where it's interesting, where you kind of come into this game, you don't necessarily know how you're going to win, but you get some of the cards that will tell you how to win.
Right.
Okay.
There are also ways where people can either take a card from you,
Sure.
or destroy a card, or shuffle your hand away, or cause people to draw more cards. However, the deck itself, I think it's less than 40 cards. It's actually a pretty compact game, so you can actually go through the whole game after a few different playthroughs to get an understanding of what all the cards do, how they can interact, and that kind of thing.
Nellie says it reminds her of Red 7, which was an Asmati game that is very much about changing the victory conditions to stay alive until you're the last one remaining. So I guess the part that I'm kind of like clinging onto here or latching onto is that changing of victory conditions. How core is that? Or is that just one of the things that happens in the game?
Oh, I think it is very, very much the core of the game. I mean, one of the big ones is just acquiring a certain number of attractions.
Okay.
Once you have that on your field or in front of you in your circus, that changes what you're going to be trying to pull. However, the game, although there is a strategic element to it, it's also a quick playing game.
Okay.
It is fun. It's very, very swingy. People can, play 7 different cards and then discard the rest of their hand and change everything around.
Well, Flux is kind of the epitome of the swingy game too.
Right, so there are some elements of that.
Okay.
But I do want to emphasize that while this is a quick play, while this is swingy, you can do get lucky with some very, very big combos, as well as make some strategic choices that get you there. It is not total chaos or randomness like we didn't play test this all, or Flux to an extent.
So it borrows some of that kind of variety, but isn't quite as wild and crazy. So it's
Correct.
a little more kind of contained and consistent, I guess, is a kind of a way to phrase it.
Yeah, I think you're going to have a consistent experience,
Okay.
but not the same game over and over,
Great.
if that makes sense.
Cool.
Yeah.
So who would you recommend this for, other than, say, maybe fans of Flux or Red 7 or this other game that I can't remember the name of that I'm sure somebody
Right.
in chat knows?
I would say, actually, this could pertain to a lot of players that maybe they're waiting for their 4th player for a game.
Sure.
This is a good in-between game
Okay.
that you can play a couple rounds of very, very quickly. This is a game that a lot of folks will just either bring in their bag, keep in their backpack, take to a con, anything like that.
So how long is the playtime supposed to be?
I think it's about 20 minutes.
It claims 10.
Well, even faster. Like I said, you can play multiple games very, very quickly in this one. So yeah, I would
Very
say it reaches a wide audience. If you're looking for the deepest, most strategic card game, this isn't going to be it, but that's not what it's made for. It's made to be a quick, lighthearted, fun game.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great. I think we have one game remaining. Is that right?
Yes, we have one game In the
yes,
Wings.
my wife figured it out. I think it's Council of Verona, or Verona is the game. Have
That
you
is
played
correct.
one?
I've seen it, but gosh, I haven't seen that game for I think 3 years.
Yeah,
It might be.
But it has that same idea of like, you know, it's a Romeo and Juliet story. You're collecting these characters and situations and stuff, and some of them are what you use to fulfill victory conditions. The other ones are what you use to determine what your victory condition is. So it makes for a really like intriguing gameplay. So if Verona's not in print, and this is kind of tapping into the same kind of thing, if folks like that idea of having to balance how you win and the things you need to get to win together, they should check that out.
Absolutely, give it
Great.
a shot. Yeah. The last one we have here is Dust in the Wings.
I feel like we're having a garden and butterfly themed today.
Yes, yes, we are. This is a beautiful little game.
Is it heavy enough to crush somebody? It is
No,
not. This
no.
is so if
If
Kristen wants to crush people, she's going to need many copies of this game.
No, or just the Bay.
Or yes,
Yeah. The
maybe that's why it's the Bay. She likes it so much because it crushes people. Anyway,
Bay is my bay.
Yeah, the Bay is Bay. The Dust in the Wings, however, much lighter game, actually, both in the box and components as well as the, I guess, startup time for it.
are you required to sing "Dust in the Wind" but say "Wings" instead?
You are.
Okay,
Yes.
that is in the rules.
Oh, no, I'm saying you specifically
great.
are. Yes.
Great.
This is a game, actually, though, where you are trying to gather butterflies in either different configurations on the board, that is a shared board, or get a very specific number of butterflies on a given tile to score points.
Okay,
So
seems very, very pretty.
it is great. It's not an overblown like design. They actually just have very, very nice pictures of the butterflies themselves. They are the show here.
To kind of explain where my mind goes, I was just thinking, hey, it's nice to have board games that aren't about like laser guns in space or violent combat, and now I just pictured like a whole bunch of butterflies all armed with like space marine armor wielding like laser guns in space. So if anybody wants to make the homicidal murdering space marine butterfly game, apparently I'm in.
Right. For all of you who don't put power armor on everything, Dust in the Wings, though, is focused on just butterflies and flowers. This is actually based off of the mechanics in Mancala, where you take a section and you are leaving one piece behind as you go. And
Kind of like tack too.
yes, a little bit like Tack, or Battle Sheep is another really cool one that does
Yep, Battle
something
Sheep.
similar. They designed a really interesting mechanic in the game where the cards that give you points, whether or not you have, if you get 3 red butterflies and a blue butterfly on this tile, you get this scoring card.
Sure.
Well, I don't want to get you one space away from doing that and then allow you to score that card. As turns progress, points get added to the cards that have victory points. However, when they accrue too many, they all get discarded and more get
Interesting.
replaced.
Okay.
So you can't necessarily hover or stall out around one victory
So
condition.
do people have their own cards for their victory condition, or is it a shared track?
It is a shared track of
Okay.
just 3 cards, but the board that you're working on, I believe, is on like a 5x5 or a 6x6. So there's a lot of room to move all these different colored butterflies
Interesting.
around.
That sounds very neat.
Yeah, it's neat, it's fun. There are other elements of the game where you can score points by making configurations of butterflies, by having specific numbers of them in like Tetris-like shapes. While that doesn't advance the end of the game, it does get you victory points. Whereas scoring the specific cards that have victory points on them, as those start running out, the game is closer and closer to ending.
Cool. It sounds like it's a very simple game, very pretty, but it sounds like it could have some fair depth of strategy too.
Right. This is another one that has a pretty broad range to it. There are elements of it where the meeples are actual wooden colored butterflies. They're great to play with. They're great to move around. Kids will enjoy managing to get them on different tiles to score those points. However, if you go into it looking to maximize score potential and cut someone off from victory, you can do that as well.
So this kind of reminds me a little bit of Takenoko, where you are trying to kind of like make a pattern to match the victory cards that are out.
Yeah.
Would you recommend it to fans of Takenoko? Who else would you recommend this to?
Yes, there's in Takenoko, that's a really good example of a game that shares some similarities that I think both parties will enjoy each other's games there. If you're a person in Dust in the Winds, if you are one that likes more crushing, I would lean towards Dust in the Wings. If you like to
So if you're a muscle master,
if you're a
then
muscle master,
go with the butterflies.
Yes, if you want to crush the spirits of those on your left and right when
Okay.
you're playing the game, absolutely try Dust in the Wings. It's despite it being primarily butterflies, really Super Punch Fighter and Dust in the Wings are probably the more spite-driven games here.
Okay.
Yeah, you can really hold a grudge with these butterflies, is what I'm saying.
The butterflies could drink your opponent's tears.
Oh yeah, I
Because
mean
I hear
that's
there's
how
butterflies that do that.
that's how they sustain themselves. Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I think Dust in the Wings is the last one I've got today, but it is absolutely beautiful. Be sure to check this one out.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Next week you'll be back with another selection of the games that have come out in the past week or so. And if anybody in chat is really curious about a new release or kind of wants us to discuss it, to get some impressions of it, let us know, and we'll try to make sure to include that. But otherwise, thank you for joining us. Andrew, thank you for coming out
Absolutely.
again.
Thanks for
we
having
really
me.
appreciate having you out here. And you should go visit Mox if you are in the Seattle area, or soon if you're in the Portland area.
That's correct. We'll see you there.
Thank you very much.